Welcome back. The Defense Digital Service is overseeing a pilot project that frees up more than 175 million internet addresses. It's the latest example of how the department's relying on its digital arm for all kinds of operations. Stan Soloway is president and CEO of Celero Strategies. He's former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Reform, and he's writing about the digital future of the federal government in GovExec. Stan, welcome. It's good to have you on the program. You call Mike Brown's selection as Undersecretary for A&S the most interesting appointment yet by the Biden administration. Why do you think that's the case, Stan?
Well, Brown comes to the job with some of the most unique qualifications of anybody we've seen, certainly in my career. He's not deep in the defense industry. He doesn't come out of the defense industry at all. He comes out of commercial technology. He was the CEO of Symantec. His defense experience really is the fact that he was running the Defense Innovation Unit for the last couple of years. He's an expert on cyber and so forth. So he has really interesting, good qualifications, but very different than we've seen in previous people in that position. And I think that pretends the potential for some significant change, or at least attention to some of the barriers that we've seen that are still existing to really getting the acquisition system moving as we would hope.
You reference Mike's experience at DIU, and you write that the attention that people haven't paid to that could mean what it could mean for how the Pentagon accesses, adopts, and adapts to new technologies and new ways of doing business. You and I have talked a lot, especially about the new ways of doing business. What are the digital implications for new ways of doing business, the acquisition process, and what the department's trying to acquire, Stan?
Well, so if you think about the intersection of acquisition and digital, let's just talk about what they're trying to acquire, as you just put it. The department, whether it's on the mission side within offensive and defensive systems, as well as on the business operations side, has been consistently trying to modernize and enhance the performance of its capabilities. And that is, by definition, a trend towards digital transformation. So what does that mean from an acquisition perspective? Mike Brown comes out of the Defense Innovation Unit, which is completely reliant on and a significant user of other transactions authorities. He is aware of, I'm sure, some of the problems that we're seeing with OTAs. I have a report coming out in about a month or so on OTAs, where we found that the biggest problem right now is this transition from the prototype period into production. A lot of the new players that have come into the market are exiting because of creeping back of old government unique requirements once you get into that longer term production environment. Mike Brown's aware of that. And the question is, what is he going to do? How does he start trying to get the ship even further steered in the right direction, as opposed to sort of stalled where it might be? I think it also accelerates attention to digital tools. Coming out of a technology background like he does, his alliances within the department, and then you look at other agencies, as I said in the report, in the article, there are a number of people who are very, very focused on digital as an enabler for real transformation. So to me, the big question is, A, how do we use digital from an acquisition perspective? B, how do we use more alternative acquisition or different alternative acquisition processes to get the full access to capabilities? And then C, what kind of major business process or engineering are we willing to do to enable us to access commercial capabilities? And I think that's a line that Mike Brown's going to understand better than anybody.
In the context of the way you just explained that, Stan, then it makes perfect sense. And it's not that it didn't make sense before you explained it, that his appointment, it did. But especially in the context of the way you just explained it, because the services are establishing their own software forges. They have chief software officers in some cases. And so it sounds like what you expect to see is that essentially Mike will become a chief software officer of sorts for the Defense Department in that role of A&S.
That's an interesting way to put it. I don't know if I put it in exactly those terms. That's one way to think about it. I put it in a slightly different way. We've seen over the last, and you and I have talked about this many times, over the last 15, 20 years or more, a very consistent process of what we used to call e-gov and now digital, kind of moving forward in government. It's a non-partisan issue. Each administration is built on the previous administration's achievements. What I think the Mike Brown appointment, to a certain extent like Robin Carnahan's appointment at GSA, suggests is, and I use the term not meaning in a patronizing way, the maturation of the digital thinking teams. The teams that were there 10 and 12 years ago were sort of on the outside. Now they're on the inside and they're in leadership positions. And so now the opportunity is to take what was the other way of thinking and mainstream it more going forward. And I think that's where you might see the process turn.
So the reference that you make there, I think, is interesting because when Mikey Dickerson left U.S. Digital Services 4 or 5 years ago, there were questions in the community, what was the future of USDS? Matt Cutts just announced he's leaving not too long ago. There's nobody that I've heard that's saying, I wonder if USDS is going to survive. That organization and this concept more broadly are both a thing in the government now, aren't they, Stan?
Very much so. And then I'd add one layer to that, Francis. There are a number of people. Robin Carnahan's a great example. Dave Svenyak, Chris Heisen. You look at a number of the appointments are folks that came out of the 18F/USDS community back 10 and 12 years ago. They are not at USDS or 18F anymore. They're now in agencies doing operations. So you have this transition from, in some cases, of senior people from that community into senior actual leadership and management roles.
Stan, we have about 30 seconds left. What do you watch?
I'm watching. I want to see. I think this is a great opportunity. I think it's very exciting. To me, the big question is how much real process reengineering do we do? Because I think that's the key to really transforming and using digital in the best way. If we just digitize existing stuff, it's not going to make as big a difference. It's all about really transforming the processes behind the wall that's going to enable us to get where we need to go.
Stan Soloway, thanks as always. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Francis. Thank you.